It's a new day on SpaceX Daily, episode 49, coming to you from Vancouver. It's July 30th, 2026. Let's get into today's SpaceX developments. A fresh $1.6 billion Pentagon award secures 18 Falcon 9 missions through 2027 and extends national security launch cadence from Vandenberg. The U.S. Space Force awarded 2 task orders worth $1.6 billion for 18 Falcon 9 launches from Vandenberg Space Force Base through the end of 2027. The missions will carry satellites for the space-based sensing and targeting portfolio. This contract adds to SpaceX's existing national security manifest and directly supports missile tracking and targeting constellations. The launches will use the same Vandenberg pads already handling frequent national security flights. Next milestone to watch is the first of these task order missions and any associated payload integration timelines. From that contract scale, the same procurement framework just saw another classified flight. The NROL 95 mission lifted off at 3:10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It was the third National Reconnaissance Office payload flown under the National Security Space Launch Phase 2 procurement. The launch used a Falcon 9 and delivered a classified spacecraft into orbit. This flight adds another data point to the current cadence of national security missions from the Cape. Liftoff occurred after the vehicle completed pre-launch checks on the same pad used for multiple prior NRO missions. While national security flights continue from the Cape, parallel infrastructure work is expanding capacity at Vandenberg. All Points Logistics received $250 million under a commercial solutions opening to add facilities at Vandenberg for satellite inspection, testing, fueling, and integration. The work will support higher launch rates by reducing ground processing bottlenecks. This is the third company selected under the same contracting vehicle. The expanded capacity directly enables more frequent Falcon 9 and future Starship national security missions from the base. Facilities will handle inspection, testing, fueling, and integration steps that currently limit daily throughput. Ground processing gains matter most when the vehicle itself is iterating. Elon Musk shared additional information on Starship following the successful Flight 13 test. The update came after the vehicle completed its mission profile despite earlier delays from engine ignition issues and weather. The details focus on hardware and operations refinements for upcoming flights. SpaceX launched Starship for the 13th time last Friday after 2 delays, one on Monday when several Raptor engines did not ignite, and another on Thursday due to unfavorable weather conditions in Starbase, Texas. Remember, we covered Starship Flight 13 yesterday. Today's details move the reuse and catch questions forward by highlighting specific post-flight hardware changes. While Starship advances, regulatory changes could affect future launch site approvals. The Department of Transportation proposed exempting commercial space launch licensing from many environmental regulations. Industry groups welcome the change as a way to shorten approval timelines. Environmental organizations have criticized the proposal for reducing oversight. If finalized, the rule would affect future launch license applications at sites including Starbase and Vandenberg. The proposal covers licensing steps that currently require extensive environmental reviews before each new vehicle or pad configuration. Regulatory relief could also benefit non-SpaceX vehicles still working toward flight. Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg said the company is feeling pretty good about a possible Central Standard Time 100 Starliner flight this year. The statement came during updates on the vehicle's next steps after prior crewed mission delays. NASA and Boeing continue to work on scheduling a cargo mission to the International Space Station. The timeline remains under active discussion with no firm date locked yet. The next flight would serve as a cargo demonstration ahead of any crewed return. Competitor timelines provide context for SpaceX's own public valuation discussion. SpaceX received an analyst price target from Raymond James following its initial public offering on NASDAQ. The rating came after the stock experienced a tough first few weeks post-IPO. The company's Starship Flight 13 success last Friday provided additional context for the valuation discussion. The target reflects continued belief in Starship and Starlink progress despite the recent trading volatility. Orbital infrastructure ideas beyond traditional satellites are also emerging. Observers noted that Boeing's Central Standard Time 100 Starliner could still reach orbit this year if NASA and Boeing finalize the next cargo mission schedule. Reports indicate the companies are actively working on a timeline but have not yet locked a date. Community members discussed a Beijing startup raising roughly $14 million to build a space situational awareness constellation, adding to China's growing commercial SSA sector. One thing worth watching is that the Department of Transportation's proposed exemption of commercial launch licensing from many environmental regulations has drawn criticism from environmental groups concerned about reduced oversight at coastal and desert launch sites. The rule would shorten approval timelines but leaves open questions about long-term monitoring of launch emissions and habitat impacts. Final adoption would require addressing those objections through public comment or revised language. On the AI front, Sophia Space and Caltech received a patent for large modular space-based data centers intended to host computing hardware in orbit. The design targets orbital facilities that could support high-power workloads away from terrestrial power and cooling constraints. Intel unveiled the Starfire processor, built for radiation-tolerant onboard data processing and AI inference on satellites. The chip is positioned for future orbital edge compute applications that complement ground-based training clusters. From an engineering standpoint, space-based data centers face a fundamental energy balance problem where every watt of compute must ultimately be rejected as heat through radiation, rather than convection or evaporation. The Sophia Space Caltech patent describes modular orbital platforms that place server racks behind large radiator surfaces sized for the expected thermal load, trading launch mass for continuous solar array power and passive cooling. This approach collapses the idiot index on terrestrial power and cooling infrastructure by moving the entire stack into vacuum, where the only recurring expense is the incremental mass of radiators and solar arrays. The design choice also removes land use and water consumption constraints that increasingly limit ground-based clusters, yet it introduces new variables in launch cadence, radiation hardening, and station-keeping propellant budgets. If the modular architecture can be assembled and serviced at the same cadence now demonstrated by Falcon 9 national security missions, the marginal cost per delivered inference token could drop below the equivalent ground facility once launch prices reach the low hundreds of dollars per kilogram. The patent's modular approach further allows incremental scaling through individual radiator and server units launched separately and joined on orbit. Radiation tolerance becomes the binding constraint once the platform is assembled, requiring shielding mass or component hardening that adds back some of the cost savings achieved by eliminating ground infrastructure. Starlink's existing laser link architecture already demonstrates the intersatellite data routing needed to move processed results back to users, so the data center concept can leverage proven flight hardware rather than requiring an entirely new communications layer. Power generation via solar arrays scales linearly with radiator area, creating a direct relationship between compute throughput and the total deployed mass that must be lifted from Earth. Early orbital test articles will therefore focus on validating the thermal rejection efficiency and the station-keeping propellant budget under realistic attitude control loads before any larger constellation is attempted. And a quick market note, SPCX is at $112.55, down 0.5%. Before we go, the next engineering milestone to watch is whether any flight demonstration of a small orbital compute node validates the radiator to payload mass ratio assumed in the patent. That's the day at SpaceX. That's a wrap. SPCX is trading at $112.55, down 0.5%. If you're new here, subscribe, and this briefing finds you every day. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow. And before you go, This show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets. Each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen. First Principles Daily, reasoning from raw materials, not analogy, on the breakthroughs that actually cut cost. Find every show free at naranetwork.com. Following the long arcs, story trackers on naranetwork.com follow major programs across episodes. Tesla, SpaceX, AI, space science, and more. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.